What's going on YouTube? JT is Reborn here, and welcome to another edition of my Star Wars Rewatch. And in today's video, we're going to be talking about the best of the Disney era Star Wars movies. I am, of course, talking about Rogue One, A Star Wars Story. Now, this is the one I feel like most audiences and fans have kind of been the most okay on. It never really offended anybody. Some didn't like it, some found it dull, but for the most part, it's been the best received Disney Star Wars movie. Not in terms of box office numbers, but in terms of fan and critical reception. It had the best balance. People were like, you know what? I may have not liked Force Awakens or Last Jedi, but you know what? Rogue One was fine. It's kind of an inoffensive movie. It's beautifully shot. Gareth Edwards, who directed 2014's Godzilla, directed this one, and it is easily, without a doubt, the best looking Star Wars movie. Gareth Edwards has a great job of showcasing scale, and the shots in this thing are absolutely incredible. The supporting cast is good. You have Alan Tudyk as K2SO, you have Donnie Yen, you have a couple of other people, Mads Mikkelsen makes out the cast. Ben Mendelsohn as Director Krennic is great. Darth Vader's in it, and he has the best Darth Vader scene in any Star Wars movie towards the end of it. There's a lot to like in this thing. There are some issues I have when I went back and rewatched it. The two main leads, Cassian Andor and Jyn Erso, are very, very dull. They're not really that interesting of leads. I'd say they kind of drag the movie down. I almost felt like if you took kind of like a Boyega and Daisy Ridley and put them, I mean, granted, they're not necessarily the way they're written in terms of personalities and that, and put them in this movie, it would have been better. But as far as the movie's concerned, it's fine. I'd say it's pretty solid. It's not the best Star Wars movie. It's definitely the best of the Disney era ones for sure. There's a lot to like in it. The third act is amazing, but it's really those first two acts that really kind of drag down a bit. But I think my favorite character in this whole thing is the droid K2SO. He's the best thing in this movie. Mendelsohn's great because he's Mendelsohn doing his thing. There is some questionable CGI, namely what they did with Tarkin. It's Peter Cushing. It's basically Peter Cushing acting, but it's not Peter Cushing. He's in this movie CGI'd more than he is in the original Star Wars film. I mean, some of that, at first, whoa, that looks just like him. And then you see him talk and it feels kind of out of place. And then they did the kind of Leia thing at the end of the movie too. But I think if you've never seen the original Star Wars, you wouldn't necessarily know the significance of this thing. This thing doesn't really exist without A New Hope. You wouldn't understand the significance. But if you're somebody who's invested in the Star Wars lore and mythology, I think this movie is a pretty solid entry within that thing, but it doesn't necessarily stand out on its own. But it wouldn't have been made without, the original Star Wars. But still, it's a solid Star Wars film. There's not really any Jedis or anything like that. I mean, you have Darth Vader doing his awesome hallway scene, which is the best scene in this movie. But really, other than that, I think this is a solid Star Wars film. It's the one I enjoyed the most out of rewatching. It does kind of drag from time to time, but like I said, there's just a lot to like in this movie. Unlike when I was just rewatching Solo the other day, I can actually see what's happening. It's beautifully shot, like I said, whereas Solo was an ugly-looking movie. This thing, I'm like, wow, every shot is just spectacular. Just look at the shots of this. Look at the cool stuff going on at the end. Look at all the fan Easter eggs and stuff that's kind of thrown in there. So, again, I enjoyed Rogue One. It's not an amazing, mind-blowing movie, but it is the best of the Disney Star Wars films. It's the only one where I'm just like, okay, I dig Rogue One. It ended on a high note. Sure, it dragged a bit. Sure, the two main leads are pretty dull for the most part. But again, I know this movie did go under some heavy reshoots per se, but I don't know how exactly that affected the full product. I mean, there's definitely some differences you can spot in the trailers, some shots that aren't in the movie, some key differences here and there. But I did, for the most part, enjoy this thing. Is it going to change the game in terms of Star Wars movies? No, not necessarily. There's some things you'll miss too. You'll miss the opening crawl, you'll miss all these different things. But it is the first official Star Wars theatrically released spin-off movie. Gareth Edwards is kind of that guy where it's the testing waters for certain things. When 2014 came out, it's okay, let's test the waters. Let's see how this would do. And Rogue One's okay, let's test the waters. Let's see how this one would do. It could be very successful or it could very much not be successful. So it was the first attempt to kind of branch out in terms of the Disney Star Wars things. It was successful, but it led to other lackluster movies like Solo and such. So there's some good and bad with this thing. But I do recommend checking this one out. Again, the characters are kind of the weak point for this one, at least the two main leads, who you have to kind of are forced to follow through most of it. But I do think the supporting cast is really strong in this one, particularly K2SO, the droid, and Donnie Yen for sure. But yeah, those are my thoughts on Rogue One. Next, I'm going to be watching the original trilogy, starting with Episode 4, A New Hope. Let me know your thoughts on that down below, or on Rogue One, a Star Wars story. And now we're into the original trilogy. I'm kind of exhausted right now. I've just watched 5 Star Wars movies. They're all like 2 hours long, so it's taking a while to get through. But now onto the original trilogy. All right, that's all I gotta say. Take care now. Bye-bye then, and I'll see you all in the next video.